First of all, I want to give credit to Arlo for thinking about this topic. He makes a lot of great videos and talks about things that not too many people talk about. Making Pokemon main series back to 2D. This is something that I've been thinking for a while now, and there are other people who are starting to talk about it. So I want to start spreading it out as well. Pokemon is obviously one of, if not the most successful franchise in the world. And for something that is that big, you expect it to release video games with very high quality. Unfortunately, as every year passes, the quality of the games gets worse. There was a moment in time when we were seeing big upgrades after each generation. Slowly, as we get into the DS era of the Pokemon games, we've been noticing a couple of 3D models when it comes to buildings or cutscenes. But it all still fit with the 2D sprites. Eventually, when we received the first 3DS mainline series game, Pokemon has completely turned into 3D. Everyone was so excited that Pokemon has gone through a brand new style that made it a lot of people get back into Pokemon. Even after we reached the 7th generation, the series has been getting upgrades. The trainers' models finally looked realistic instead of just seeing them in the cutscenes. And the environment was starting to look more realistic. All the buildings were actually in the right scale when compared to the trainer model. Everything looked like Pokemon was heading into the right direction. And soon we will see that open world Pokemon game that we all dreamed about. Traveling anywhere in the region side by side with your Pokemon, so we can travel the world just like Ash Ketchum did in the anime. If you watch this video in the future and you don't know who Ash Ketchum is, then wow. I guess I'm speechless, especially since I know that is going to happen one day, now that he is not the main protagonist in the Pokemon anime. I'm sure many of us imagined of being Pokemon trainers in real life as kids. There used to be many kids who play Pokemon games back in the day, but now there are many adults who play it because it has been around since the 90s. So imagine just how long us adults have had to wait for the technology to advance so that we could finally experience that open world Pokemon game. Main series Pokemon games have always been for handheld console exclusively for Nintendo. Game Freak had no intention of releasing them to a home console. They want people to have a more personal experience with their games. Having a handheld console means that you can take it anywhere with you. And if you have friends, you can interact with them with the game a lot better than the home console. This probably would sound weird now because we have online games, but allow me to explain. Back in the day, if you wanted to connect a console with another, you couldn't really do it. You could do LAN play with some consoles, but just imagine that you need two consoles connected to two different TVs in the same room just to trade. That's too much of a hassle and would discourage people to interact with each other. Remember that the main Pokemon games are single player and require their own console. They're not like other games where you could just play on the couch with other people using only one copy of the game. When playing multiplayer with a friend in handheld, all you had to do is get a link cable and connect between them. It was so fast and easy that it made everything so convenient. Playing games with your friend with the link cable could be such a hassle if you're playing an intense game. There are some people who move around a lot when they are trying hard in a video game. But most handheld games, especially Pokemon, are not intense where you must press so many buttons and risk pulling off the link cable. Pokemon games are so casual that you can play while watching TV. Or since it's portable, you can take it anywhere, like on your bed or on a cozy place you can think of. Over the years, Nintendo always had two different consoles to appeal to different types of gamers. Handheld consoles sacrifice power to be portable. As years went by, technology kept improving and handhelds have been becoming more powerful. If you compare a 3DS with the Game Boy, even though it's about the same size, the 3DS is on another league. It was only a matter of time before a portable device would have the same power as a home console. Nintendo eventually came up with the Switch, a hybrid console that can be played both handheld and on the TV. Since Pokemon has always been on a Nintendo console, and Nintendo getting rid of their less powerful handheld, Game Freak has no choice but to release their mainline series Pokemon games on a home console. As soon as we received the Pokemon game to the home console, that being Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, the graphics were already beyond what was capable on the 3DS. We went from an 800 by 240p to a 1920 by 1080p resolution. Since Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee were remakes based on Pokemon Red and Blue, there wasn't much impressive improvements to be made. The world was based on a top-down Game Boy game, so the expectations weren't as big as a full 3D game where you can rotate the camera and inspect every shape and every angle of the environment. Eventually, And by eventually, I mean the next year, we finally received the next generation of Pokemon for the first time ever on the home console. This was something that we've all been wanting. After the reveal, something seemed off. Even though the trainers and the Pokemon models looked impressive, the environment did not. There are some good looking routes and giant cities to explore, but it didn't look alive. Everywhere was empty, abandoned. The region was linear and lacked exploration, which was one of the main features why people love to play Pokemon. It is not fun to replay a game if there's only one way to go every single time. There are many few optional routes you can take, but are so rare and far between. And it doesn't help when most of the textures just look outdated, which takes you out of that emerging feeling. Since the cities look realistic with an empty environment, it is hard to imagine yourself in the world, just like you did with the older Pokemon games. At least you could play the game using your favorite Pokemon. Well, before the game came out, it was revealed that not every Pokemon would be returning, and it has been like this ever since. I'm okay with this idea since it's not like they're removing almost every Pokemon in the game. But it's the reason why they made this choice that leaves a bad taste in my mouth. They wanted to dedicate more time into the animation, but we already know how that turned out. There were some animations that looked amazing, but most of them were moves exclusive to specific type of Pokemon. I'm not sure if this mattered because they were taken off by the next game. Pokemon Sword and Shield had so many problems, such as the online or the frame rate being too low. But let's move on to the most recent Pokemon titles because no one cares about Sword and Shield anymore. Well, maybe we will after a few years if Pokemon continues down this path. Eventually, we received the Pokemon game that we've all been waiting for. We finally received an open world Pokemon game where we can explore to our heart's content. Defeating any Pokemon gym leader in order like we always wanted, and not only that, but we also got extra things to do such as defeating Team Star or challenging Titan Pokemon. Finally, every trainer can have their own story. To be honest, this was the most I've had with the Pokemon game for a while since Pokemon X and Y. Pokemon ever since Sun and Moon have been so hand-holding and making you do long tutorials that would just discourage me from replaying the games. When showing everyone an environment that looks fun, just let them roam around. Sure, you can explain some rules to get a better understanding, but don't make it seem like a tour where you can only see and not touch. I've replayed Scarlet and Violet so many times now, and it always gives me that same feeling when I was a kid growing up with the older titles. It feels like I can do anything and making plans on where to go this time and what Pokemon to get. There are a couple things that still bother me, and those are the bugs. The game is glitchy and the frame rate is bad. Before this game came out, me and my wife were so excited to play this game. We were especially excited because we can play co-op in this game and we could finally beat the game together. By the time the games came out, she only played 20 minutes of the game. The reason is because the frame rate of the game would give her a headache. Here we are a year after the game came out and Game Freak still has not updated the game to fix the performance. I played hundreds of hours in this game, creating teams, shiny hunting, playing through the game again, and it still bothers me that the performance is so bad. I know people say just don't buy the new Pokemon games and Game Freak will listen, but there's still much more to it than that. I still love playing Pokemon, even though it's a buggy mess and I'm afraid of the game crashing and losing all my data, which has happened a couple times. Pokemon games are still one of my favorite games to play of all time. Yes, there are bugs, but every new Pokemon game that comes out makes a quality of life improvements that makes the game so much better, such as team building. You can breed down Pokemon and have egg moves easier than ever. It is a lot easier to EV train your Pokemon and switch their natures. You can have access to battle items in the beginning of the game instead of having to rush towards the end if you're a competitive player. I started loving this franchise from the anime, wanting to experience the Pokemon world for myself in the shape of a tiny handheld console. There are others who build teams to compete, travel the world and catch Pokemon and meet real life people in Pokemon Go, people who play the trading card game to collect their favorite Pokemon in physical form, and to compete around the world. Pokemon is so much deeper than what most people from the outside looking in might think. There is a reason why Pokemon is so successful. Sure, there are many video games that are better, there always is, but most of the franchises out there does not hold a candle to how big Pokemon is. Even the numbers show that. So I can't just let go and not play the next entry of the next Pokemon game. There's so much heart that this community built. This is something that I have been thinking for a while, and I think it would make so much sense and easier for Game Freak to do. They should really consider making 2D Pokemon games moving forward. We all experienced 3D already, and it's not going the way we wanted. Of course, 3D will always look more like a AAA game, but this franchise is Pokemon. Pokemon is based on 2D, and we know that the 2D artworks looks a lot better than their 3D counterpart. You don't see merchandise showing a 3D Pokemon model. It does not look appealing. Pokemon has been looking more realistic as generations go by. I'm sure a hand-drawn image will look way better than a 3D model. If they can match the 2D image with the anime or the artwork, they can reuse the same image for future Pokemon games. We pretty much reached a point in video games where 2D games can look so amazing. The resolution isn't going to increase anytime soon. Back then we had sprites, and that only kept improving because of the hardware. I would really love to go back to sprites. I prefer that than 3D models. I think they already perfected them in Pokemon Black and White in the 5th generation, but people will still complain because the sprites would look blown out when being too close to the camera. In a way, they were right. It wasn't that bad because it would be on a tiny screen. Just imagine how the blown out sprites would look on a big TV. That's why I think doing 2D drawn art would be a better style, since you can zoom in and the image will still look good. I'm sure there are Pokemon out there with a small design somewhere in their models that would be hard to miss if there were sprites. Just like 3D models, Game Freak could reuse the 2D images for future Pokemon games. They would be even more future-proof than the 3D models because 3D models still must be updated and waste time. Just like Arlo said in his video, making 2D Pokemon games would be a lot easier and take far less time. Pokemon has to keep up with the card game and anime, but ever since Ash left the anime, I feel like this is Game Freak's chance to really improve on their games. I don't know where the anime is heading because it feels so much different than collecting gym badges, and the Pokemon League isn't the main focus anymore. The anime can come up with a new formula and take their time creating good episodes and storyline within the same generation that they won't have to keep rushing it. If the Pokemon company slows down their mainline series of games and the anime since it's going on a different direction, I really feel like Pokemon can go through a major change going forward, releasing high quality games with an interesting story going forward. This is what I think about Pokemon going 2D and what they should do. I hope this would bring some light to people who are thinking the same way or who haven't thought about this. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I would love to hear new ideas because even though I want 2D art to come instead of 3D models, I'm pretty sure there's a much better idea out there. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all later.